y'all, it's me, Kim, and I have good news and I have bad news. So the good news is I'm starting a new feature called I Have Thoughts. And basically the premise of the show is pretty simple. I have very strong opinions about pretty much everything, but I love to hear other people's strong opinions, particularly when I think that that person is smart, thoughtful, insightful, knowledgeable. So I'm inviting a guest to talk to me about something that they have a really strong opinion on. I want to hear spicy hot takes. I want to hear what you're passionate about, what you have a deep niche knowledge of. And so I ask them, what do you want to talk about? And they'll tell me a book or an album or a genre or a TV show. And then I take some time to get acquainted with it. And then we sit down and hash it out. You know, I think that everybody doesn't get a platform like this. Like, everybody doesn't get an opportunity to just go deep on something that they really, really love. And so this is it. So this first episode is going to be with Myles Johnson, who is just so brilliant, and he's gonna tell us who he is later. But the bad news is the audio for this is horrible. I made just such a stupid, silly mistake with the microphones, but Myles is so brilliant that I didn't want to trash the episode. So if bad audio is a deal breaker for you, girl, I get it. No harm, no foul. I completely understand. But I do still think he has some great stuff to say. And he decided that he wanted to talk about Afrofuturism and funk. So this is our conversation. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
I am an artist. I try to be a good friend. I'm a writer. That's like I fell in love with books, and being literate was very big in my household. Yeah, and then just trying to do the right thing and sometimes the best thing that I know how to do. And so that's kind of
You're committed to doing good.
Yeah, those are the kind of the things that I feel most comfortable tethering myself to.
Yeah. No. Like, a commitment to not being an asshole is really important.
Yes.
In 2019? Wait, we really need that?
It's felt more and more superhero-like as the time has gone on. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah. No. It's rare.
You're right.
So, first of all, I have to say, thank you so much for choosing this topic. I had so much fun doing the research. Yes. I had so much fun. It reminds me of my mom, and like, my mom is 61, and she used to like play funk like when we would go on road trips.
Mom's 59.
Yes.
So yeah, she grew up in that same era.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what made me return. I think I've always kind of tried to fake pride myself on being like, you know, a black music connoisseur. Like even when I was like 14 and 15, and like I listen to Erykah Badu. I don't listen to what you all are listening to.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the older funk music I would not listen to because I was like, that's my mother's music.
Oh, I loved it.
And then as of recently, maybe like in the last like, I would say like 4 years, I revisited it as like a serious culture music offering that we have to pay attention to.
It's also referenced so much in contemporary culture. Like, I'm obsessed with Solange, and I'm obsessed with Janelle Monáe. I think the art Android, I think that project is so underrated. And
it's one of the best albums that came out in the last 10 years.
It is flawless. It is so good. And so there are so many references, particularly in those two, but it's all over to this kind of era and this kind of feel. To it.
And yes, I think that like when you have some artists like Solange and Janelle Monáe, and like even I guess like for whatever you feel about them, like a Donald Glover and Kendrick Lamar, they obviously incorporate those.
I like them.
Okay.
I know Donald Glover is
he is a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
And I'm like
yeah.
But I think when you listen to their music, it's easy to like kind of like hear the funk references.
Yeah.
But I think that even when I hear there's a lot of different music when I listen to the Future album, and really just the layering of different musical modes on top of each other is what funk music was born out of.
Yeah, and even like the ethos of it. Okay, also, by the way, today is George Clinton's birthday.
I love the universe.
Dude! Oh my gosh!
I love the universe. I actually did not know that.
I saw somebody tweet that, and I was like, this is crazy.
I know that he's on his last tour this year.
Is he?
I was doing a lot of just at my old job. I was doing a lot of like research, trying to like, coordinate some stuff, and then with Shaka Khan and George Clinton. But he's on his like last. Because of his farewell tours. But I did not know today. When I picked the subject, I was just like, this is what I'm genuinely into.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love Parliament, Funkadelic. I love George Clinton. And in doing the research for this and going back and listening to the music, watching the concert videos from like the late 70s, I watched a couple of documentaries. George Clinton is a legit genius. Like, I don't know what we need to tell BET, like, y'all need to be honoring, he is beyond.
Yes.
And the fact that he's able to reinvent himself so many times, like, I'm there.
Yes.
I'm a fan now.
Yes. And I think that, like, of course, like the music part is one of it. Yeah. But I think that so often, for better and for worse, when it comes to me, that I look towards Black musicians and artists as type of like not lifestyle role models, but like what is it about them that I admire? Yeah. And how can I absorb that into like my own daily life? Yeah. And George Clinton was just somebody who just really saw like the suit that like life gave him as like not enough, and said, I'm just gonna create some other shit. Yes. And that's what Bootsy did, and that's what like these other like that's what it was all about. And I think that a lot of times as like a queer person and a Black queer person, I think a lot of the coming out, and there's like, again, that's a polarizing conversation too, but I kind of honor the coming out moment because it was a moment to say, well, I was who you wanted me to be, and here I am coming out, and I'm using almost like my gender expression and my sexuality as leverage to actually create who I really think that I should be in the world. Yes. And to me, the funk musicians were the people who did that the most interesting, and like yes, don't get me. I'll get.
No, I was just thinking while I was watching the documentaries and stuff. It's like, Kim, what kind of art would you create if you were free? You know,
what was your answer?
I don't know. I can't get on that. But my thinking was just like, it just seems like in the creation of this and in the many iterations, I kind of focused in on George Clinton because I just thought, dude, this dude has done so much. And also I loved Betty Davis. I listened to They Say I'm Different.
Oh my, I remember, Ariel put me on. I was in her house. I was in Atlanta. Black lesbian woman who I used to work with. And she had this Betty Davis record. And I remember seeing it, and she put it on, and all I heard was, he was a big freak. Yes! And I said, what is this?
Whoa, what is this? Yes, it's just, sometimes I think that I'm concerned that our generation and even younger generations, like, we think that we're the first people to ever be sex positive, and we think we're the first people to ever be in touch with our bodies and like really have a broadened understanding of like what freedom is, and we're the first people to reject respectability. And it's like, no, we didn't start that
at all. And I think the cool thing about Betty Davis is why I think it's important to maybe revisit people who did it first. Is to see the fullness of what she did. I think that she started it off with, he was a big freak, but then she also talked about 70s blues and growing up on chitlins, and like she also talked about like her spirituality, and like even in he was a big freak and stuff like that. It wasn't just about the sexual part. It was offering kind of like a power critique, and he used to laugh when I made him cry, and like there was a lot of different just dimensions to it, and I think that sometimes we can see like maybe the aesthetic appeal of something, and we can appropriate that aesthetic appeal of something, and we don't necessarily want to align with like the political, spiritual appeal of something too. That's what really made it like a revolutionary moment for her. She was in the afro, with saying these things, and for lack of better comparisons, like looking like somebody who looks like a Angela Davis, that dichotomy of the whore and the angel. So like you look like an Angela Davis, but you're singing like a somebody else, and
it's like an intergalactic Angela Davis. Because even on the cover, the album art for They Say I'm Different, she's just wearing this like, it actually reminded me of Lady Gaga's meat dress. Is what it reminded me of. It's like a little romper thingy, and it's like leotard.
Yes, and she's like, look, wait, am I thinking about the right one? And then she's on the motorcycle.
No, it's like she has her foot up on something. I'll insert a picture of it. But there's a couple of ones. One where she's like on the motorcycle. One where she's just wearing these like
the nasty girl.
Yeah, yes. I think her first album she was wearing like little hot shorts and then like silver platform. I was like,
the three.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
you're doing it.
Yes.
And I think I'm so glad that you inspired me to go look at Betty Davis because I like that she. You can juxtapose her kind of the feminist stuff, even though she probably wouldn't call herself a feminist because a lot of women of that age don't. But like, I like to juxtapose what she is doing next to the kind of, even though I love Parliament Funkadelic, but the music is very, it's masculinist and it's very. When I was going through, I was like, ooh, this is sexist, and then it's sexism's cousin, homophobic. Okay, like I get what y'all are doing, but it's like, oh, I'm not y'all going to outer space, but I can only be the girlfriend.
No, and I think even like that's what's so interesting about like some of the first people that you think of in our generation who are holding that tradition are Janelle Monáe and like Solange, because like even when I listen to Solange's music and like being able to hear I Love When I Get Home, that's another polarizing project, but I really loved it.
Wasn't the hugest fan, but I get it.
Huh?
I get it. I wasn't the hugest fan of When I Get Home, but I get it.
And I think music has so much to do about when you receive it.
Yes.
And I think that was a time where I was feeling like I was in middle school again, and I was feeling like a weird kid, and I was in New York City, and I think that and then she was kind of like contextualizing her Southern home with her weirdness, and I needed that delivery so much that like even Alexis K. Tyler, who's in part of it, my very first art show that I did when I was like 23, Alexis K. Tyler was one of like our people who talked there. So we were already kind of on like this kind of like idea of like this digital sex positive, almost like Hotepi moment. But like,
what was Alexis K. Tyler saying to y'all? It wasn't like pussy
no.
Like that. Okay.
It was actually really beautiful. It was when it was around the time where I guess like the police brutality, like Trayvon Martin just passed, and I think that like that kind of energy was really there, and then so it wasn't sexual at all, but it was definitely still like Southern and like loud and abrasive, but it was kind of like spiritually sound and also like politically like direct, like listen, when things like this happen and we have tragedies like this, we're being asked to meet a moment, we're not being asked to relax into it. And I remember, we can make jokes out of women, period. That's kind of like what the culture is. So I think, and then when you have a personality like hers, it's really easy just to like shut down everything she said. But I think that like, I may be projecting a lot, but like it seems like Solange understood that despite the aesthetic that she has something to offer, and I think we understood that, and I think that's kind of like been like the Southern.
She's more than just that.
Yeah,
it's more than just pussy.
And that's been the Southern tradition of like, I think even when I think about like Erykah Badu and how she has a sense of humor, but then she's also kind of like some people's like musical spiritualist, like that's kind of the funk tradition, and like all these people who like the Sun Ra's and the George Clintons and the Betty Davis, these are Southern people, and we've just Southern Black people have really held the tradition of keeping those different things that make you a human being, and not saying that this is less important. I'm not a sexual person because I'm in the boardroom. I'm not an intellectual person because I'm in the bedroom.
I think it's so I didn't love When I Get Home, but I appreciated what she was doing for weird Black girls. And also rejecting. It would be so easy for after A Seat at the Table for Solange to be consistently elevated as like the woke queen, like the woke goddess. And so rejecting that with When I Get Home and being like, I'm not gonna wear no clothes and I'm gonna shake my ass.
And you know who else did that?
Beyonce?
Who's like, no. Wait. The gay boy in me is like, thank you for saying it. That's not what I was thinking about. But who did that? Who's definitely a part of, like, to me, like the funk conversation is Stevie Wonder. And Stevie Wonder came out with Songs in the Key of Life, and which was like this like soul blockbuster. He did have all these political critiques, and his very next project was The Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. Which
nobody understands.
Which is the experimental thing, which has some of my I love Flower Power. Like I love Black Orchid. I love the whole album. And she even mentioned it. She invited me to the Texas Immersive Experience, and I remember she even mentioned that like that gave her bravery of seeing him kind of. We know what the next step is when you make a blockbuster is to make a bigger blockbuster,
right?
But sometimes the artist's calling is not to outdo themselves commercially, but just kind of keep on feeding their curiosity. And sometimes it's going to give you great riches and all the attention and everybody loves you. And sometimes it's going to be lonely and it's going to be a test of like, are you that dedicated to your work if the whole world is not embracing it?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a brave thing to do in the social media era.
And I think that those expectations can be a prison.
Yeah.
When you're constantly trying to do the next thing, how you gonna outdo something in your life?
Yeah.
Just do whatever your heart is calling. And like all of the uproar and the love and like I was obsessed with the seat at the table because I was going through a bad breakup when it came out. But like I appreciate that Solange was like, oh no, we're gonna do something else. I'm going to Houston.
Yeah.
Like we needed that.
Yeah, and I think for me a seat at the table, I love the music, but I recognized I didn't have the same experience that a lot of people had.
Ooh.
So I remember like certain things where it's like for us by us and this shit is for us and like don't touch my hair. I'm like I'm in Atlanta, like nobody was touching my hair.
Okay.
And this has always been for us by us. So like a lot of this stuff felt like kind of like and these things are good too, right?
Yeah.
Like I love what Toni Morrison critique when she talks about the Invisible Man. So like it's like doesn't mean that we don't need the Invisible Man. It's not great literature, but we have to recognize that this is kind of like something that's interacting with an outside force that we usually call white people.
Yeah.
And then I felt like when I get home was such an intercommunal private conversation and it was inside of an inside community and it felt like secret. And I think that's why I like funk music so much too, is because it's like, oh, like you understand this like this cosmic intergalactic shit, but then you also are like referencing like chicken and watermelon and it's messy.
Like the subalternates, like it's indecipherable to if you are not plugged into the conversation, you cannot recognize it. You have to have a certain kind of literacy.
And there's something really cool about like the reasons why I understood it is because like I was a fan of like the Tierra Whack moment, the Terrence Nance moment, but then also a fan of like the Sun Ra and like the Funkadelic moment. And like it was built inside of that space and that gave me like this specific language to be able to like the understanding to be able to understand what she was creating, and that feels cool. Like, and it felt good to be like, oh, everybody's not gonna get it, but visually you get it with like a random act of flyness to me, and like maybe like a sorry to bother you sometimes, like you know, depending. Like I like the weird shit too.
It's not supposed to be readily accessible to everybody who wants to plug in. Like you have to be on a certain wavelength. And
that's how you get certain things. I think even with the Lion King album, like gift, like with the gift specifically,
I love it.
And it's probably white people are they're not gonna like hate it. They're probably gonna be indifferent about it. But that's kind of, she did something very specific.
Or even, have you seen this conversation about brown skin girl, where it's like brown skin girl is for all women of color, and it's like, no, it's not.
People are just,
shit is not for you.
And you know what? People are just like really delusional.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and I think that like it's even with me, it's like I have as much empathy as I can have with it, but it's just like even with me, I know that like for me it happened, I think I was like 15, so sometimes it's weird that it happens with adults. But I remember like, oh my god, like everything's not for me. And even with like, I was raised by black women, like it was certain times where I'm like, as I'm getting older and I'm like really like experiencing myself as like a young black man, there were certain spaces where like I was kind of like intruding on like a feminine like woman sacredness that I was not invited into, and that took me a minute to be like, wait, that everything inherently that y'all do is not for me. And that's something that can be a shock to the ego and can be painful to go through, but it's okay, and you go through it. I'm just so surprised that people are still doing it on the internet.
I'm not surprised. I am not surprised, because I think that people want to own things. Like it hurts if you can't own everything you touch or everything that incites you or draws your attention. But I will say, even as a black woman, I'm cis and I'm straight, and there have been times when stuff that queer folks make in queer community, and I have to be like, oh, I'm not, and that's it's okay. And it's kind of a mind fuck, because I think that sometimes when you like I'm oppressed, like I understand oppression, like I can, but it's like, no, actually you can't. That's not for you. So just like take a step back, you know,
and it's like
and not take it personally.
And it's like any other relationship. I do think there are just beautiful times where we can be like a bigger Black community, and I've witnessed and experienced it. But I think that like just like when you have a partner, and you want that partner to have their own friends, you want them to have their own hobbies and their own things that they're passionate about, their own life outside of the relationship. Yeah. We have to do the same thing as Black people, and certain things and projects and moments are just not for everybody. It's for that group of people, and that's just going to make them even more interesting and even more empowered when we are in these communal situations. So it's nothing that's taking away from anything. So we have to like get over the narcissism of the moment. Like,
and that kind of self-awareness requires introspection, and I'm not sure if everybody's doing that kind of self-reflection.
Yeah. Well, I did say that I try not to be assholes. So like, to me, I was like, that's just how I was like, that actually, because you do it and you mess up, and then you hurt people's feelings, and if you don't want to go around hurting people's feelings, you're going to examine it, and you're going to decide for yourself if it was valid or not, and act from that space. So I just wish more people.
You can be hurting people and not intend to hurt people.
But if somebody is brave enough to say I was hurt, then like that's like a gift to be like, oh shit, I wouldn't even know.
That is such a good the bravery that it takes to say, oh, that didn't make me feel good, because so much of the conversation with the anti-PC warriors and whatever is you're a snowflake, you're so like you need to toughen up and all that, but like there needs to be an understanding of if you're the only person, it is lonely and alienating to be the only person to raise your hand and be like, ooh, that one right.
It never feels good to feel like a disruption. Yes. Like disruption, no matter how much we like romanticize the word, that is a hard act to disrupt something.
Yes.
Is hard. Yes. So you never want to, feeling like a disruption is never a peaceful state to be in. That is a brave state to be in. Specifically when you maybe couldn't not feel like a disruption and be quiet, or just like shrink yourself, or just say, oh, it'll be over in 2 weeks, and you're saying, no, I'm gonna embody being a disruption right now. That's hard to do.
Sorry, my phone is right. I thought it was the time we're going up. Okay, I'm listening to you. Okay, so I wanted to get to kind of some of the political stuff in the music. So what does funk mean to you?
Funk means to me, I guess, the foundation of how I've been able to feel what I've learned. So I guess like if I'm reading like the Audre Lorde and I'm reading like bell hooks, I'm reading these things that really feel like the truth and feel like this mode of like, and the reason why I like love Black feminism was because like it kind of made, it just felt like the truth, and it felt like a way for me to be freer. And then funk music, the music of it felt like a musical expression of that freedom. So like, because I'm like, when I'm exercising, or when I'm dancing in my room, or when I'm like writing or thinking about something, or like smoking weed with friends, if I'm like playing this music, it's almost like the themes of it, like you can't like listen to Maggot Brain or like the Ohio Players, like I want to be free, and listen to that music and like not. And then you're writing about freedom and reading about freedom. It was just like another layer onto it. So like funk just feels like another part of like the freedom.
And it's like
mission for me.
It's like political, but it's not like political in the ways that the narrow way that we sometimes kind of define it. I consider it to be political, kind of like in the, you know how we say like joy is resistance. You know, it's so interesting to me that like funk comes in the time, we're post civil rights era. We're pretty much post-Black Power era in the mid to late 70s. And it's like, okay, we're done with all that fighting. Like, we gotta go, right? Like, okay, so like that fight was cool, but the shit is not gonna get fixed, so we gotta go somewhere else.
And I don't even know if I see it as that linearly. Like, I think that like what else could happen in, let's start the post-Black Power movement. Like, what else could happen in a society where we are kind of like centering the idea of like we're going to make our own institutions. We're going to center our own beauty and our own knowledge. And then like, what does that then sound like in our rock and roll efforts and in our musical efforts? Like, to me, funk like feels like an echo more than like a. It just feels like very clearly like, oh, that's the only way that we could have gone. You know what I mean? If John Coltrane is taking more and more drugs and making this music, and Myles Davis is doing this, and like even when you think about Betty Davis, Betty Davis' real name is not Betty Davis. She was married to Myles Davis, and she was one of the people who really reinvented him and helped him like kind of disrupt his own style.
I had no idea that she was married to Myles Davis.
So it's a clear aesthetic style, like, and I'm talking about music and how he dressed, difference between when he met Betty Davis and when he and before he met Betty Davis. He was always cool and he was always there looking sharp and stuff like that, but it was kind of like, it was post the beatnik era and like this all black and, you know, whatever's not doing it. And then he met Betty Davis and she said, this is what you should wear and what you should do. And then there's even tapes now of the Betty Davis and Miles Davis recordings. And she also was partners with Jimi Hendrix and said and suggested that he has more of a... Jimi Hendrix was working on an orchestral like type of sound before his death. So like she was really there, and she kind of... It sucks that we have this thing where like a woman can just be oversimplified to the muse. Yeah. But that's such a huge part of her legacy too, was that she really pushed these really innovative, brave men to be even more innovative, even braver. And she did it by suggestion and through her relationships. And she also did it by example. She was like, well, I'm a black woman and say he's a big freak. So what can't you do?
Is there another way to like frame the muse thing? Because I loved Fosse Verdon. And like, I like the idea of like, it's not just being a muse, it's like being the root.
Yeah. And I think, and it's just so many truths. So I think that's artists. Yeah. I think that if me and you are like, let's do a project together, there's gonna be like I said with my other friends who I collaborate with, it's like I don't know where like the work begins and God ends. Yeah. Like it can feel like that, but then when you put it out in the world, then the world is a patriarchy, the world is capitalism, the world is white supremacy. Yeah. So that's gonna decide, is the cis black woman who you know who's then gonna be able to succeed more with this, or am I gonna be like, who knows? Depends on the space. And I think that's like a different critique, but I do feel like from what I've been reading that the relationship was an artistic relationship between two artists, and she needed to know how to do things more as like a business and performances, and she needed to kind of like have a certain belief in herself, and she needed the musicians, because she was a genius in her own right. She needed the musicians that had a certain type of genius in them to interpret the sounds that she wanted, because she wasn't getting those sounds, so she needed that too. So it was that. It just sucks that once you have to sell it and make a living off of it, all these other kind of like social political realities start informing it. But yeah, the muse, that's the failure of like I don't even like that term, but it was hard. It was just hard to figure out a better way to describe it. I think we're all
still trying to figure it out, and I'm glad that we're at a point culturally where we're trying to rectify it, reckon with it, and like rectify the historical record, you know, and not and kind of like exhume these past. That's why I loved Fosse Verdon so much. That it was brilliant. But I also love the ways that we are just contending with black women's work and black women's contributions to culture, and have it be centered, put it at the center. Okay, another thing that I was thinking of when I was going back and watching the Parliament Funkadelic, the concert videos, I was like, these aesthetics are kind of queer, no? Like they're right. And so what was so interesting to me was these men, the tightest pants, deep V, feathers, wigs, all that, and then you have the nerve to be homophobic in the music. I was listening to an album called The Clones of Dr. Funkenstein, and in one song called Gaming on You, they literally were singing the F word and not fuck. Yeah. I was like, what you doing?
Right.
You out here in heels. What's going on?
Right. Yeah, I think I've been like uniquely, maybe not uniquely actually, excuse me, it's not unique, but I've been definitely trained to, like, I'm a Wu-Tang fan. Yeah. And I'm a gay person. Yeah. So like, it's like, I'm trained to kind of like maybe hear things and then also either put them in context or sometimes just ignore them. Yeah. Like I was listening to Boom Bye Bye and I was like, that was just not, it was just not pro-gay. Yeah. So I think those are the realities too. But I think, so even inside of my own gay relationships and in romantic relationships I have with our community, I know that there is queerness that exists in homophobia. I know that me being feminine has brought me a lot of just like suffering in my relationships, and I know that I see a lot of like femphobic, homophobic things said usually first by my own community. Not to say that my own community is like more homophobic, but that's
your community, the black community,
or the black queer community is what I really black queers men who I've been with, and a lot of times I have to work out patriarchy and homophobia. I'm doing it through those relationships. Yeah. That's my community. That's what I see more regularly. So these things, to me, it doesn't feel like that deep of a contradiction. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, that's everything. Like,
Right.
like, so it does make sense that maybe you're exploring that queerness, that thing that I think that most Black people really have inside of them to be able to explore, and then you're also still dealing with these like other things that make you want to express your patriarchy.
Yeah.
And I guess it's been years. It's so like far removed from like my generation that it feels like I can like watch it with a certain amount of like objectivity and appreciation in the same way when I like might like read like Ernest Hemingway and be like, oh, that was racist, but I'm still able to consume it and like understand and dissect it in a certain way. Whereas if it came out by Donald Glover tomorrow, I'll be like, what the fuck are you thinking? You know what I mean?
I mean, yes.
I guess I'm able to see
like,
it as a timepiece, I guess.
Yes, and I guess as a Black woman who listens to rap music, right? Like, I'm still gonna twerk. Like, so, I mean, there's another song on Mothership Connection called Handcuffs, which is basically like, do I have to put handcuffs on you, woman, so you don't leave? Do I need to keep you barefoot and pregnant?
No, see,
and
okay, so George Clinton was a deep patriarch. is a deep patriarch. So, like, that's just, if we focus on him, like, we'll have, so I think that.
I'll be like, were you booty bumping the handcuffs? Is that what you were doing? But like, yeah, and she'll be like, and were you twerking to shake it like a dog? Like, yeah, I was. Like, yeah, we all are trying to wrestle with, I don't even know if they're contradictions, but it's complexity.
Yeah, and I think that everybody, and I think that's why I'm a little bit obsessed with the 70s. I think everybody who was Black and artist and who was out there really wanted freedom, and they were wrestling with without them even knowing that this is actually what's stopping you.
Yeah.
This patriarchal mind state.
Yeah.
This idea. This is what's actually stopping you from your freedom. But but the aesthetic and what you want to express and the music that you want to make and how you want to look in your stage performances is really showing this striving of like of wanting freedom. And I think. The gift of not being in that era is being able to like read what Angela Davis, wrote and what maybe Bell Hooks like theorized, and then also see in what Betty Davis was doing, and then see what George Clinton was doing, and then like almost correct their gaps as you're learning, and say this is what it could have been, and like maybe I can think of something that could not correct it, but like, be an advancement of that model.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is important. As like a cultural critic or a cultural historian, to not approach this stuff with like not to be too judgy.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to be up on your high horse and just be like, you should have known better. Because to be quite honest, I know in 20 years somebody gonna watch these videos, listen to whatever podcast I make and be like, she was fucking whack, like she should have known better. And like, I think context is important. But also like, we're all trying to get somewhere, you know? And like, I don't know, I can just now, as a less judgy grown person, just be like, okay, just, it is what it is. Yeah. We can critique what we need to critique, but then we can move. We don't have to. Yeah.
That's how I feel about it too. But there's also, to me, like, inside of funk music, there is like the Ohio Players. And these people, and I think that when I think of like erotic images that I find that don't feel like exploitative. Like I think I don't know. I love the Ohio Players.
I think that the album covers are beautiful. I don't know what the line between eroticism and exploitation is. I think they're tap dancing on it.
I think probably the clear line needs to be consent to do it. So those two things, you know, we've had the models talk about it. I guess for me, I don't
even know about that. I mean, okay.
The woman who was in the Honey. Yes,
but you know, I think that, you know, I'm not love a choice feminism person, so I do think that we have to evaluate a choice in the context of what is available to us. So yes. If you made the choice and you didn't feel exploited and you posed for the pictures, but also like if you want to be a model, then what are the options available to you? If you want to get shine and be celebrated as a femme woman, then is it as equally accessible to you to do the honey dripping into your mouth thing as it is to do other stuff? And if you only get the opportunity to be the half-naked woman with the honey dripping into your mouth. I don't know if that, we can really call that, like, choice. Like, yes, you consented to it, but, like, your options were constrained in a way that makes me, I don't know, I just have questions. But, like, yeah. Anyways, that's mapping a lot onto that. But, but like, yeah, I mean, like, it's complicated for me.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a failure in these because, like, it's just, from my perspective of looking at that era and, like, looking at the 70s and, like, just everything that was happening. You know what I mean? Not just inside of black music. That, yes, I definitely agree. And I think that's still the same thing now, where it's like, if Jay-Z asks you to be in a music video and you want to be a model, it's just like, that kind of...
But there's still something so beautiful about, like, the peak era of video girls.
Yeah, there is something beautiful about it, but I think there's difference between, and I guess for me, and I could be corrected, I guess, like, when I see, like, I do think there's a difference between being in, like, a Two Live Crew music video and a Tribe Called Quest music video. And I think there's a difference between being sexual in Common's Go music video and being sexual in a way that feels exploitive. So to me, I would have those on my wall as art as a black gay man, and I think those are such an interesting display of, like, black feminine power, and I see those things and feel empowered in myself and in the women I see around me, and like and kind of like a black femininity that feels sexual but still feels black and still feels like it's like that it is explicit but like on my terms. So I think that's the energy that I feel about it. But then I could not possibly speak for like everybody who participated in it.
It is complicated because it's so interesting now. You know, we're having these conversations now. This is so tangential, but whatever. We're having these conversations now about how rap artists, hip hop artists don't use a lot of black women in videos. And it's so interesting, right? Because, you know, in the tip drill era or whatever, we were like, don't have black women in your video like that. That's not the kind of black woman representation that we want. And now, as an adult, I'm like, I wish we could get some black women in videos again.
Yeah, and I think sometimes
I don't know, and it's like, why? What's going on?
But I think the problem is sometimes. So I think that in the 70s, again, I'm gonna keep on going back to that era. Is that like it was before cable? People, I don't even remember this, but like there was a time that you could not just turn on your television and see CNN. So it's like the media and the images and what those. So you would see the Ohio's Player album cover, and that'll be an isolated event, or you would have to go do it. But now it's like that's all we see. So now it's not just a video is a good representation of something. A video is becoming the pedagogy of how you be a sexual woman. Period. And this is your only. And now representation is not just something cool that feels good. Now representation is the education of what it means to be that person. And that's, to me, like the bigger failure. So like maybe we're not relying on videos at all. And they're just a fun thing again that you can put on your wall. I think that's...
Okay, you just give me something to think about here. Yes, I live for this. But then I also like have, like instead of the music video, now the medium is different. Okay, I'm thinking about that. Is there anything else that I thought about? Is there like a particular like body of work that you are like particularly drawn to from that era?
Yes, a lot of them. If I were to pick one, They Say I'm Different by Betty Davis. That is just the pinnacle. I think that's what funk music is. She references the blues. She's sexual. I think that the freedom that she wants, I think the kind of freedom that like funk music strives for could really have only been articulated by a black woman for real. And I think that like black women, because I hate that sometimes us knowing freedom means that we probably intimately know enslavement. And I feel like from what she just knew where she wanted to be free. So she had like a racialized idea of freedom and a spiritual, in a sexual one and a gendered one. So when you really listen to her work and her body of work, but specifically They Say I'm Different, because she was really saying these are the things that are blocking people from really accepting me as an artist. And she just stabbed them, and she didn't just stab them and talk about them and saying, if you could only see that I'm a sexual person but you're still a woman. She didn't do it in a hippie Woodstock way. She said he's a big freak.
And that's risky.
And I used to spank him with my turquoise chain. Like she was like, this is who I am. They say that I'm different because I eat collard greens and chitlins. Like she really put it out there, and to me it's just an amazing, important piece of work.
I think it's so important the space that she was occupied at that time, and the fact that there's still in 2019 not a whole lot of space for that. And I just read an interesting article about the pleasure politics. It was on like maybe NBC News Think or whatever. And somebody's writing about the pleasure politics of like Megan Thee Stallion, and I really only cared about Megan Thee Stallion. Lizzo, she was talking about, and how this is not a new thing, but it seems like we're in a new era of Black women artists being able to say, I want this, like this. I want to fuck like this and do this, and I'm going to present my body like that. And even now, people posit that as being novel. So thinking about the things that Betty Davis was doing in the 70s, I'm astounded by the bravery of that, the potential to like lose. Like, you can really lose a lot of stuff by going out on that ledge.
And she did. Yes. She lost. She was disappeared from the music industry. Yes. It's just now that a lot of her old records were being discovered, and even during her documentary about her, there was one that was animated by the same animator who did King of the Hill. It's really good, but he actually goes down in series. I
was reading. His name is Mike Judge.
Yes, Mike Judge.
And he's like a stan.
The documentary's on the. He does Rick James. He does Prince. He does The Time. I was like, this is how come. I was like, sometimes race essentialism just doesn't work, because this was a great like primer to like when you know what I mean, and the like refresher. I remember like I watched it. I was like, what can I watch over the weekend that's like not like. The whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I watched that cartoon. I'm like, that was a good thing, so I can like kind of have everything on my head, because I'm not a history student. I'm like, I feel my way through things. I definitely don't remember my way through things. So sometimes I'm like, if I don't have the Wikipedia by me, I'm like, oh, I don't remember, or I don't have the book by me. But yes, I actually lost my train of thought by going on that tangent.
Oh, well, anyway, the scene that Betty Davis was so, I hate the phrase ahead of her time, but she was doing things in a way that was different from, we don't have to accept what has been given. And so I like that Betty Davis did something different, went out on that ledge, lost it, but I'm so glad, again, that we're in this space where we can go back and say, oh, no, that was the shit.
Yeah.
And we're going to make sure you know that was the shit.
And we can use that moment, because I think there's so many things where it's like, and I think that's the gift of like, if there is a gift of maybe somebody going through something like that and seeing the wrong, is that we can literally name what went wrong. Yes. And because we are Black feminists, and because we're knowledgeable of stuff, we actually know how we can support and do different things. And like, that's why like I kind of feel like one of my like mini callings is just like, if I see something I love it and a Black person is doing it, and I feel like it's not being contextualized rightly or really with like a lot of integrity, then I try to my best to use anything that I know to like be able to contextualize it correctly, because like it needs to happen now, because I think that if there was that New York Times piece really contextualizing Betty Davis, or if there was that Essence piece really talking about like certain things, in Sunrise, like a politic, and not being like, oh, we're not talking about that silly Negro Sunrise or that floozy Betty Davis, but really taking them seriously. I think that maybe that would have helped them, and I think that also would have made audiences
also help the audience
and made audiences be able to receive them and take them more seriously. And I think things change,
so. People try to shit on cultural criticism so much, like, what gives you the right or the expertise to talk about this thing and deconstruct this thing and dive deep into this thing? And I'm like, great cultural criticism is a social good.
Yes.
It is important for people who are knowledgeable, who understand our contemporary moment, who will understand a history, who have deep foundations, to be able to go through it and break it apart and make those connections. First of all, it's not easy. People be thinking, I'm like, you can't do that. I'm like, and I'm not even trying to, but I'm like, I know what I'm good at. And it's like, you think you could do this?
And it's not easy, because sometimes you'll get pleasure from what you're seeing, and it doesn't feel good to you. Don't.
Yes.
Again, nobody wants to embody the disruption.
Yes.
It does not feel good. So I'm like, why can't I just have loved it?
Yes.
Because I don't want it to be the one person who said.
But even if you enjoy it, I can say I liked this thing, but there's a little bit.
And that's usually because I go by the idea that if I don't have love for it, then I'm not going to critique it.
Yeah.
Like, I really just feel like it just gets to a nasty place if I do it, like, even like in my own, like, body and psychology, if, like, I just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if I'm probably going to enjoy every single thing that Solange does.
Yes.
Like, just off rip.
Yeah.
So the real hard part is to enjoy it and to love it and maybe use it, and then also understand that it could have been better, or understand that there was gaps in it that maybe other people couldn't see. And not so sometimes even Solange could fix it herself, or whatever, insert any artist that can fix it, but so the other person who's reading it say, I'm actually going to do art that actually embodies this space, and I actually didn't know why I was making these things, but this gap is here, and this gap actually fits exactly what I want to give people. And think I've just seen those things happen that make it worth it. But yeah, it's not always fun to do. And I think everybody should be a cultural critic at some point. I don't think everybody should.
I think that because of social media, everybody is a cultural critic.
I think everybody is a judge on social media.
Okay.
And
so what separates cultural criticism from being
cultural criticism is a meditation. I think cultural criticism is the ability to step back from the cultural moment in production and be able to look at it objectively, despite you enjoying it, despite you hating the person who produced it, and really tell the truth about what's happening, and doing it in a way that you can give it to an audience that can read it. So my audience is the Black queer audience, so I'm going to do it in ways that like only I can be able to talk to that audience, and you're going to be able to do it in ways where whatever. And then sometimes because I'm a fan of yours, so like I read your stuff and I'm like, well, goddamn, you know what I mean? And I think that's what it really is. But it's a practice. You can't. You don't just go around judging things or connecting. There's rigor. It's a rigor. It's a deep practice. And sometimes you're not psychologically, spiritual ready to critique culture. I had to stop for a whole year because I needed to like focus and like wash some stuff off. Like it's something to take seriously. And James Baldwin was a cultural critic, you know what I mean? And even like when you think about the American canon, like Edgar Allan Poe was known first for being a harsh cultural critic. You know what I mean? Like this is a sport. And sometimes you need to lay it down, but you always need to be clear-minded or you're going to end up hurting yourself. You know what I mean? Just like in any other sport. And it's just like, and I think everybody should strive to do that since we are such a culture that gets so many cultural productions. We also strive to be cultural critics and meditate and be able to separate and sift through things and pay attention to your diet. If you care about what you're putting in your body when it comes to food and you read the ingredients, or you think that like maybe I need some more vegetables. I've heard that other people don't think that. I'm saying that. But like maybe you need some more vegetables, then you should do the same thing with the content and the things that you're reading and the things that you're viewing and the things that you're listening to. You have to do the same thing with that and kind of know that there's some days where it's like I can't listen to Black women being degraded on a constant reel, and doesn't make you anti-feminist or anti-sex positivity because you don't want to hear certain things, or make you like less Black because you can't hear certain things. Like that's a part of your diet too. You'll be a different, just like if you listen to McDonald's or eat McDonald's every day, you'll be a different person. Kind of the same thing with certain types of content.
You know what? I was resistant when you first said it, but I actually agree with you. I think that everybody does have the capacity to be a really good cultural critic. I think that it does require a certain kind of consciousness about how you're consuming and like what you're internalizing that I'm not sure everybody is committed to. So many times I'll say something and people will just be like, it's not that serious. You're seeing things that aren't there. And like, why do we need all that? And I'm just like, no, because like, even if you're not naming it, you are still internalizing this image. I don't know. Or it's not a new thing, but I do think it is difficult maybe because of stan culture. Like, I don't know. Like,
but I think that like, so even with me saying everybody should be a cultural critic, right, which I definitely still agree with. I think the thing that makes it a little bit foggy is because I think when I say everybody should be a cultural critic, it means that everybody should be a celebrity cultural critic, which essentially means that you have more than 10,000 followers and a platform pays you to pay that. I don't think that everybody needs to be doing that. I don't think everybody's called to do that. And I think that's different. I don't think it has nothing to do with being a cultural. I think everybody's an artist. That does not mean that I think everybody's going to have paintings in the Louvre. So like these are we know what we're called to do, and I think that sometimes we try to interpret things that our skill sets into modes of making money and celebrity, and it kind of muddies intentions. And it kind of can over congest certain industries, but that's not what I was really saying. I think that if you're a mechanic and or you own a restaurant or whatever, and you watch television, you should be able to be a cultural critic. And maybe it's not New York Times, maybe it's your dinner table, or maybe it's your group of friends or whatever. But you should be having these deep conversations about what you consume. You need it. You need it. What are we doing? We're grown. We can't just be offering stuff like we're not. Just like our mothers don't just hand us what we should eat every day. We can't just ask if they don't care about our medicines and all this other stuff, surely don't care about what we're watching on television. And you see that people are dying because they don't have enough insulin. So we have to be relentlessly critical.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna end on, you know who I think is the best at metabolizing criticism, like contemporarily?
Who?
I think it's Beyonce. I think it is remarkable to me. There have been so many criticisms leveled at Beyonce about representation, no representation of fat bodies in Lemonade, and then we get Homecoming and we see it. Just on so many levels, it seems like Beyonce or whoever is close to her is seeing those things and not dismissing it outright as hate. And that's why we get such good, like, finely tuned products.
It is, and I am excited and get chills to be able to, like, say that, like, I know for a fact that, you know, like, that is exactly why she's...
Because your park would approve.
But that's exactly why she's so good at what she does, is because she doesn't get into... She does have that meditation. She does have that space between reaction and between what she's given, and she doesn't inherently think that anything that's said about her or her art is inherently bad. Now, of course, it's such a volume of stuff that you could not just be on Twitter and get it. But it's like, she's gonna do it. And she understands that those things are only gonna make you better. And it really has. The fact that, like, the feeling that people get, the pride that people get of watching the Formation video, I can still watch that video. I can still watch the Homecoming performance and just feel like just a pride and it's being like, yes, and everything's be suspended, and and the thing that breaks that is being like, damn, but there was so many, you know, skinny, thin, light-skinned women. You know what I mean? Or the thing that breaks it is that, damn, like, I never saw anybody who was a little bit, like, queer or like whatever, or I didn't hear. But now we hear Big Free's voice, and now we see big people. Now we see, like, now we're seeing all these things because she's absorbing the criticism. And, like, that, to me, is, like, the mark of a really brilliant artist.
And when we talk about genius sometimes, and I think Beyonce is a genius. First of all, I'm glad that we're moving away from the masculinized idea of what a genius is. But also, genius doesn't just mean it comes from God and you just show up and you do it and it's perfect. I think a part of genius is the rigor. It is the commitment to improving. You know, everybody accuses me of being Beehive. I'm not in the Beehive. I respect y'all. I understand it, but I appreciate excellence. I appreciate a commitment to getting it right. And I don't think that there's anybody who is operating on that plane like Beyonce is operating on it. And that's why we get such exceptional... Homecoming is exceptional work.
And it's only a thing... Again, when we talk about, like, the celebrity of it, she's a humongous celebrity. But, like, let's be clear... If you're somebody who loves Eartha Kitt and loves the clip of her documentary of her talking about Compromise for What, and if you've seen, like, that documentary and you've seen her do, like, different performances of, like, I Want an Old-Fashioned Millionaire, and, like, you've seen her, like, kind of her, and then you've seen, like, Betty Davis perform, and and I was just reading the play Les Blancos. So Cicely Tyson and, like, Maya Angelou was in it. So I was watching the Maya Angelou doc, and they were talking about this was one of the first, like, Broadway plays or whatever, and, like, it just had, like, Cicely Tyson, Maya Angelou, just, like, a slew of, like, black gold and, like, in performers in that. So I think when you understand the legacy of people, and then you also understand kind of like the 80s and Prince and Rick James and Michael Jackson and the fact that, like, Janet Jackson's kind of always being second tier had a lot to do with, like, even though she was a major artist, it was because of this, like, kind of masculine commercial counterpoint that was her brother that she was facing that didn't have it. I think you understand that Beyonce's legacy in her career it's kind of about her, but it's a part of this huge legacy of black women performers, and to see it right now with where technology and money and access is able to meet and create these really spectacular moments, it makes sense that people are fans. It's an exciting thing to do, just like the same way that you might have just saw, you know, Betty Davis says she was a big freak in, like, in a speakeasy and be like, oh, that was really fantastic, electrifying. Now, decades later, we're getting the same thing, and we're getting Drunken Love in Glastonbury, and it's the same energy. And why can't we be excited?
Okay, just last thing. Like Glastonbury, like the pyramid I was just so, or was that also, there's also a pyramid-shaped thing in Homecoming too, right? Like the risers were shaped in a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Even the pyramids, I was like, when I was watching the Parliament Funkadelic concerts, and they had all that Egyptian imagery and the eye and the mothership and all that. I was like,
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. I was like, okay, I get it. And it's like, Beyonce knows her history. The people around her know that history. They are intentionally connecting these dots.
Right. Those things like happen, and then it's also really beautiful. I think every artist like knows it's also really beautiful where maybe your natural curiosities.
Yeah.
When you're kind of leaning into your purpose and serving your community, that your natural curiosities can lead you to similar things.
Yeah.
So like it's even interesting to think that like, what about if like when I get home and Homecoming weren't necessarily on purpose, but these two women who were sisters were both in their creative zone, and they both came up with these really similar things, but in their own expressions of it.
I know it's also interesting. Did you watch the Aretha Franklin documentary? What was it called?
Amazing Grace?
Yes.
I did not see it yet.
I was fascinated in the Aretha Franklin documentary that the foundation, the whole premise is she's going home. She's going back to her home church. She's going back to the roots of her musical knowledge and understanding. And the fact that came out right after, or maybe right before Homecoming came out, and right when I get home, I was like,
and we all know, if you're black and specifically from South, we all know what a homegoing is.
Yes.
We all know these things. So it's like, even if like you don't even have like the brain capacity to necessarily like think I actually connected all these things, but you do.
Yes.
It's a really natural. Once you just kind of get into that black creativity, you're going to like be a vessel for that kind of continuous creativity. And it's brilliant, and it's amazing to see, specifically if that person has money. Because you're going to be like, oh, this is a really great show.
Yes. It's on a different scale, something we've never seen before. We might not, I'm not sure if we'll see it.
But same thing with Funkadelic. Like, Funkadelic had the first black pop shows.
Yes.
Like, that they were the people to do the set designs and have the spaceships in the mothership. I love the mothership. Like, that was such a cool design, and I'm like a design head. So like, I think that's so brilliant, but I can't wait to see like the reiteration of it. And then also I look at Kanye stuff and Drake stuff and these performances, and like I'm seeing that, okay, this is all living on like a continuum. The exciting part is when somebody understands that and says, oh, it's my job to elevate it.
Yes.
And then you get a Beyonce moment and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was watching, this is for real, that's it. But I was watching one of the documentaries, and somebody was recounting how the mothership came to be, and they were like, okay, well, we're just going to save all of our money and not buy Cadillacs. We're going to put it into making the mothership. Everybody pull your money together.
Right.
And like that creative effort, and now we get to a point where Beyonce ain't not pulling no money to make the big pyramid.
Yeah.
She has the resources, and she can go to whoever she wants to.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, like it does feel good just as a person who makes stuff to think, okay, well maybe I am doing this stuff and maybe somebody will be able to take it to the next level, elevate it, do something
and you are
different.
the next level. Like when you do think about, like when I think about like the black women who like I read, who, of course I don't know them, but like who I've read who and I think about their lives, I'm very clear about like I like blame all of my black feminism on Bell Hooks. Like she opened my eyes, and then and then I found out about other people after that. But it's just like I also know that Bell Hooks should have been on PBS.
Yeah.
And she should have been having these critical conversations. She should have been talking about love. And if Iyanla has a show, Bell Hooks should have a show and stuff like that. So I see you as like a continuation of that too. Mm-hmm. And I think the things that you're doing and saying that like I'm gonna be able to create this scholarship, but I'm not gonna do it just inside of the academic house. I think that's something that black women have always thought about doing, and you're a part of that continuum.
Yes. Yeah. I do think about this for real. The last thing I do think about the fact that I have the freedom to read all day if I want to read all day.
Yeah.
I get up and make whatever I want to make. And that freedom is not afforded to other people. I'm sure if you've read Bell Hooks, she talks about, I just wanted to write.
Yeah.
I just wanted to write, but I became an academic because that's the only profession that would allow me time to write. And I feel great that I didn't have to get a PhD to do what I want to do and put out the ideas that I want to put out. But that is only possible because somebody like Bell Hooks made cultural criticism, feminist scholarship. She laid the foundations and made it so people want to engage with it. The fact that I have an audience and people are paying me to talk about whatever shit that I want to talk about is only possible because somebody like a Bell Hooks or all of the other black feminists who entered the academy, because that was the thing to do.
Yes.
that they said, okay, well, we're gonna enter this, white stuff and deal with the microaggressions or the overt racism and all that, so we can push out this stuff, so that I and other Black women scholars, Black queer theorists can just be like, oh no, I'm not dealing with those white people.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just do that. And I guess like the last thing that I have to say about that. Wait, we can stop. Because it made me think about it. Just listening to you say that, it just made me think about the people who I feel like indirect, in hopes to be like direct conversation with them, like by the end of my life. but when I think about like Marlon Riggs and Edward Hemphill and Joseph Beam, and then I'm really thinking like when I really like leaned into myself, even like Sylvester and like other and just this Black gay queer artists who self-identify as men in general. Yeah. Like when I look at all their work, I'm like, oh, I'm totally in conversation with what they're doing. Yeah. In the same way where it's like I dropped out of art school. Yeah. And even then I like went to art school. Like, you know what I mean? And I was still able to figure out ways and modes to like still kind of carry on that like tradition. And it was a privilege to be able to say, I actually don't think that me being successful in life is not dependent on this moment. You know what I mean? And me kind of feeling called to do something, but also knowing that there was a lot of sacrifices being made and a lot of work that was done for that even to be a possibility in my head. And like for me to like have I was like 24 and I came out with the children's book. Like who the fuck did I think I was? Like, you know what I mean? But I thought I was their brother, their son, you know? And I think when you think of yourself that way, things start to blossom.
Okay, Myles, thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
I love this conversation. This was so beautiful.
The next thing we're going to do is do a little after show. It's going to be over on the Patreon. Shout out to all of the Patreon supporters. So if you want to see the follow-up discussion, I'm just going to ask Myles a couple of questions about what he's into right now. What are you listening to? What are you watching? Go over there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.